everybody, my name is Connie from Minerva and today I have a sew along for you. But this sew along is slightly different as it's coming in 3 parts because I am making an entire outfit situation. So I'm going to do a sew along for my jacket here, my red turtleneck and also my trousers. And this is to create an entire office appropriate look. In this sew along though, I will be showing you and sewing along with you the heather blazer from Friday Pattern Company. But just for your reference, my trousers are from Vogue's pattern number 9302 and my turtleneck is Megan Nielsen's Rowan top. But I have also made sew-alongs for both of these, which you'll be able to find down below. So this is the heather blazer, which I have here in this lovely, sturdy and quite bulging now pattern pack. So the heather blazer is described as an oversized, unstructured, modern fit, and if you make it in a linen like I have, it's really super on trend at the moment. These oversized linen kind of baggy crumpledy looks are very on trend. I would also say this project isn't particularly difficult. There are just quite a lot of steps to it because if you think about a blazer, this one is fully lined with interfacing to structure it, so there are a lot of more fiddly steps. So it's, I would say, probably a beginner friendly project, especially if you haven't made outerwear before, but it is quite time consuming. So as I said, my blazer is fully lined and I've done it out of this navy, satiny, soft, silky fabric here. And then the outer part of my fabric is this lovely royal blue linen, and it's quite a heavy linen, quite thick. And you'll also need some knit and also woven interfacing just to give areas like the collar and lapel a little bit more structure. And just before we begin, if you have any questions going through the video, you can always comment them down below and we'll get back to you as soon as possible. And also, if you like any of the fabrics or anything that I'm using throughout the video, a little pop-up will come on your screen so you'll be able to purchase from there through Minerva. And I think that's everything, so let's get on with this sew along. So if you've watched any of my tutorials with Minerva before, then you know that I always like to trace my patterns before actually getting started. So the first thing I'm going to do is take my baking paper. You of course can always use tracing paper, but this is a bit cheaper. Some pencils and a pencil sharpener and also a rubber, which I don't have shown, but always essential. Scissors, sellotape if you need to glue some of the bits of tracing paper together, and then of course your pattern. So I'm going to trace the pattern now. And of course on the back, as with most patterns, you have your size chart. They have done this one in sort of letters, so we've got extra small to extra large. So I think I'm going to be doing a size small. So I will just get tracing that. Now that I have traced around and cut out all of my pattern pieces, I can start actually cutting my pieces out. So I've got my main fabric here, which I have washed, pre-washed already and ironed. And this is a linen mix in this lovely sort of royal blue colour. I've also got my lining fabric, which is kind of a slippery satin feel. You want something for the lining that is slippery so that you can kind of put the jacket on very easily. I've got some blue thread to match. I've got my button. And I've also got my woven interfacing here. So the next step is using the layout in the booklet that we get to cut out the main fabric pieces. So I'm going to do that now. So as you can see, I've now laid out all of my pattern pieces, and I did this using the pattern layout guide in the booklet that we are given with the pattern, and I followed it to a T because you want to make use of all of the fabric that you have. So now what I'm going to be doing is cutting out the pattern pieces, pinning them down properly first of course, and I've also got a white chalk pencil here which I'll be using to add in any markings. You want to do it in a contrasting colour so that you can actually see them. So I'm now going to be doing that. And of course, also make sure to cut out the pieces of your lining, your knit interfacing, and also your woven interfacing. Next, what we need to do is any prep. So we've got all of our prep here. I have already done my notches and I've already transferred any circle marks and also the button marks. So next we need to fuse the woven and knit interfacing to the wrong sides of the correct pattern pieces. So they've labelled exactly which pattern pieces you need to fuse the interfacing on. So remember, with interfacing, what we're aiming to do is find the shiny side of the interfacing, and that's the one with the glue on, and you're attaching it with the iron to the wrong side of the fabric, and I will show you exactly how I like to do this. I've just got out piece number A, which is the front section, and you just want to make sure that you've got definitely sort of the mirror opposites, and you need to choose a wrong or right side to your fabric. If your fabric is patterned or there is an obvious right and wrong side, then that makes it easy. But if you do have a fabric like mine, where it doesn't particularly matter which way is the right or wrong side, just make sure you choose and you remember. And then I've got my interfacing here, which matches exactly. And as you can see, this interfacing on this side has a slight glittery look to that, and that's because there's the glue on it. So I want to make sure that when I'm ironing it on, I'm doing it this way so that the glue is facing it. Now, before I start ironing it on, what I like to do is trim around all of the edges about 5mm, just to reduce bulk at the sort of seam lines when I'm sewing it together. And as I will show you when we get to the ironing part, what I like to do is take a flannel or a plain muslin cloth like this one, and I like to slightly dampen it. And then when I am ironing the interfacing on, I will just lay the damp muslin cloth over, then put my iron on top, hold it for about 10 seconds and then take it off. And that just ensures that there's a smooth sort of bonding between the interfacing and the fabric, and you're not going to ruin your iron potentially if any of the glue from the interfaced fabric gets on to your iron. So first step is trimming around the edges. I have now got both of my pockets. They are exactly the same. And what we're going to be doing is having the wrong side of the fabric facing us upwards. And then we're going to be taking 6mm and ironing it down here, flipping the fabric this way round, and then ironing down at the 2 notch edges, which I've actually marked in pink so that you can see there. So we're going to be folding that down. But first, ironing down a 6mm along the top here. After that, you need to stitch down the sides of the pocket hem, keeping that 6mm pressed up, and then clip the corners off with some scissors. After that, go back to the iron and flip the pockets the right side out, pressing the raw edges of the pockets 1cm under all the way around. Once you've done that, take it back over to the machine, and then you want to edge stitch across the top along the folded edge. This just means that you're doing it very sort of tightly across the top, just barely visible, but to keep the pocket very crisp. Repeat on the other pocket too. Now that we've finished the pockets, what we're going to be doing is sewing them in between the 2 star icons. So I just marked mine with yellow chalk. So I'm going to match up the top edges to those points where the stars are, and I'm going to pin them this way round. So that one goes there and that one goes there. I'm going to pin them, and then we're going to be edge stitching around on the machine, just, you know, obviously not this bit because they are functional pockets. So that is what I'm going to be doing next. Now what we're doing is, with right sides together, we're sewing the back pieces together at the centre back seam. But I'm actually firstly going to overlock these two centre back edges, and then I will be sewing them, just to make sure that the edges are nice and secure. Once you've done that, you can put the back pieces right sides together, pin them and then sew down, then iron the seam open. You then basically do the exact same thing for the shoulder seams by pinning and then sewing the back pieces to the front pieces at the shoulder seams, and then the same goes for the side seams. Just remember to match the notches and it should turn out perfectly. Do remember you don't have to overlock though, I just like to do this to make things a bit neater and stronger. Next, what we're going to be doing is taking our upper sleeve, which is piece F, which I've got here, and we're going to be stitching 6mm between the notches. So these notches here, so between the one with the 2 notches and the 1 notch on this side, not the one in the middle, because that is just to match up with the centre top of the sleeve. And we're going to be doing a long stitch length, and this is so that when we come to put the sleeve into the arm side, so the rest of the blazer, we can actually ease it in properly. So we're going to be doing that first, 6mm on either side, and then our next thing to do is do a second line of a long straight stitch from that row of stitches, so that we've got 2 lines in order to pull up and neatly be able to ease the sleeve in. And what I've actually been doing throughout this project is using this little guide that came with the pattern, just to quickly check on the instructions which piece I am looking for, because there are quite a lot of pieces, and just help you keep organised. So let's do the 6mm and then the next 6mm. Now that we've done those easing stitches around the top of both sleeves, we're going to take piece G in our pattern piece, which is the lower sleeve, and we're going to be matching up the notches. So double notch matches to double notch here, and sewing them right sides together for each sleeve, just down with our 1cm seam allowance. But what I'm actually going to do first, like what I did with the actual main body of the blazer, is I'm going to be overlocking down each of the sides as well. So I'll probably do a little notch marking in here so that I can tell afterwards which notch side which goes to which. So I'm just going to go overlock, 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 and overlock down all of them. The next step that we're going to be doing is actually inserting the sleeves into the main sort of bodice of the blaze that we've already done. So taking the sleeves, you want to look for the double notch edge and on each sleeve. So we've got the double notch edged here, and this one is always the one that goes at the back, which can be matched with the arm side on here. So we've got the double notch there. And what we're going to be doing is doing right sides together, pinning, matching all of the notches. All of them should match up, especially also this seam here and here. And then we're going to be pinning round. So that is our next stage. you can see that we've got this sort of excess of fabric between this notch and this notch where we did these sort of gathering ease stitches. So what we're going to be doing is taking the 2 threads that are nearest us on this side. So the underside, you always want to do the underside stitches, not the top ones. And we're going to gently pull them both evenly up so that there is no excess fabric around here. And what I like to do is pull it up slightly. Really only a very small amount, because we're not putting a gathering stitch in, we're doing ease stitching. So we want to pull up a little bit, and then we want to aim to get this as smooth as possible. And what I like to do in the meantime is just take those 2 threads and do a figure of 8 loop round the pin, so that, for instance, if I need to change the amount of ease that I'm pulling in and I need to put in more, then I can just take this out, pull it up a bit more, and then do the same thing again. So I'm just going to make sure that they are even on both sides and nice and smooth, and you can just smooth them out with your fingers and then pin them into place. Now I am actually going to sew on the sleeves to the arm side. So to do that, I'm going to actually remove this section from my sewing machine, so we've got a smaller kind of arm to work with. And then you want to take where you've pinned and just sew the whole way round. And as you're going, if you encounter any kind of wrinkles, you just want to smooth that out as you go, so that there's no wrinkles when you kind of turn it inside out. We're not going for a gathered effect, we're going for a bit more volume in the sleeve so that it kind of contours around the shoulder area. I'm now happy with how that is sewn in, so I'm going to take an unpicker and I'm just going to unpick those 2 sort of gathered lines that we put in before, and then I'm going to, from this side, go around the edge with my overlocker just to make sure it's all neat. Now we're taking our pieces D, which are the pieces cut on the bias with the woven interfacing on one side. And what we're going to be doing is right sides together, putting them together and sewing and then ironing out along this centre seam. So I'm going to pin them here at each end, sew down 1 centimetre for our seam allowance, and then ironing it open. So now that we have ironed that piece out, we're going to take it so we've got the notch side upwards, and we are going to have the interface side facing us, and then right sides together we are going to match it to the right side of the back of the blazer at the top that we've already done. So first things first is match the seam here. So I'm going to match that exactly, pin it into place. Then we want to match the notch here to the shoulder seam. Pin that there. And then we are matching our little dot to the dot on the blazer. So pinning that there. And then doing the exact same on the other side. Once we've done that, we can begin pinning around. So what I like to do is just hold it slightly curved outwards and then match the edges exactly like that in place. It might seem like there's a bit of excess fabric first, but you kind of have to hold it as it's going to be sewn, manipulate it in place a little bit, and then it will match perfectly. So I'm just going to pin around all of there. Next, sew the under collar down to the jacket, and after that you can clip into the seam allowance of your collar, but you want to leave around an inch of a gap between the circle at the end and then the main collar, and then you want to press this all open. Now next what we are doing, which is step number 16, is with right sides together we're going to be pinning the front facing, so C, which is our one with the knit interfacing on, to the right side of our lining piece, which is the side front lining piece, and that is letter H. So we're going to be matching the notches, so doing them right sides together. I'm going to flip that round like this and start pinning. So we are doing this side here, matching the 3 notches with the 3 notches here. And then we're going to be sewing all the way down this entire length until the bottom notch, but first pinning. Now we are going to be taking our back lining pieces, so pieces I, and we're going to be matching them right sides together and then sewing along the centre back, and we're going to leave the space below the notch unsewn, and this is again later where we're going to magically pull our jacket the right side out from eventually, and that's what it says in the pattern piece. So I'm just going to match them like this, matching the notches, and firstly pin. So we've got this notch here, and I'm just going to pin that together down to the bottom, and that's where we're going to sew from and to. And just so that I don't accidentally tear down the rest of the bag, I'm going to actually do a little cross here with my pin, so I definitely know to stop here. Okay, there we go, and now I'm going to sew here and here. Now for our next few steps, we're actually going to go back to the instructions from steps 8 to I think 13, and we're going to be doing basically the exact same thing that we did with the outer layer of the fabric to the lining and interlining kind of sections. So I'm not going to explain again what to do in each step, but just know that we are going to be doing those all again for the lining layers. Just to give you an idea of what we're doing, so we have got our back lined pieces here which we've just ironed, and then we're going to take the front lining which has our facing attached to it, which we did in the previous step, and we are going to be sewing those right sides together on both the side seams, so matching up the notches here, and also the shoulder seams, but we want to start with the shoulder seams and then do the side seams, so we're going to be doing that for either side. Now we can go about inserting the sleeves into the arm side, so we're just going to do exactly what we did with the outer body of the fabric. So I've turned the body of the lining here inside out, and then I've pulled my sleeve through. So we've got right sides together, and we're just going to be matching notches and the top point here to this seam on the shoulder. Just pinning all the way around and then pulling up these threads just to ease them in, but again without any massive gathers. We're just going to smooth them out with our thumbs so that they fit perfectly inside the shoulder of the arm side. So now what we can do is actually attach the lining layer to our outer layer. So I've got my outer layer here, and what we're going to be doing is laying the outer layer on top of the lining layer, or the other way round, whichever you prefer, right sides together. And we are going to be matching the collar, so the under collar on either side at the dot. So remember that we stopped at the circle on either end of the collar. So you want to find that circle and you want to match it to the circle on the other side. So I'm just going to lay those together like so, and just pin into place, and do the same on the other side. Then what you can do is match the center seams of the collars, like so. Make sure they're completely lined up. Pin those into place as well. And then we are also going to be pinning around that top edge. But as you can see by the looks of it, there seems to be rather a lot of fabric on the lining side layer. So I'm going to show you how you can manipulate that just by pinning. So firstly, I'm going to just line up the corners, pin those into place. And what you're going to do is sort of manipulate the fabric so that it is bent like this. And this means that this layer here, which is a bit bigger, will fit into this fabric piece here. So just bend it as you pin and pin into place. You might need to adjust this a few times, but that is fine. Next, you need to sew down between the circles and make sure that you pivot at the sharp corners. It's essential that you do not sew on the seam allowance past the circle mark, otherwise it won't be a very smooth transition when you turn the jacket inside out. You want very crisp edges. So now we've done that, we are going to go around pinning the front and back here all the way down. So you've got your little lapel there, and then pinning all the way down, and then sewing those sections on either side. Now that we've done that, we are going to trim around the collar and also down the length here, all to 6mm. So this is called the grading, and we're also going to snip off these corners here and here on the lapel, just to make sure that when we turn it the right side out, it all lays smoothly. Once you've done that, take your jacket over to the iron and press the main fabric sleeve hem under by 3.5cm. When doing this, just make sure that you're lining up the seams to make sure that it's even the whole length around. So our next step is a little bit strange, but what you're going to do is turn the entire jacket inside out, and then you're going to get the two sleeves which go together. So just to make sure you've got it right, this is the collar. I'm turning it to the side, and then taking my two sleeves here. And then what we're going to be doing is taking our lining layer and pulling it over this little hem that we just ironed upwards and pinning all the way round. But you want to make sure that when you do this that your seams are lining up, so just like that. So I'm just going to pin all the way around there, and then we're going to sew that down, and that just makes a really clean finish for the lining. Then stitch around the sleeve hem on either side where you have just pinned by 1.5 centimeters, back stitching at either end. And to keep the sleeve hems from drooping, I then just tacked the overlapping seam allowance down, like so, on each seam join, so at 2 points for either sleeve, 4 in total. Now we will move on to hemming the jacket, but what I wanted to do first was overlock round all of the raw hems at the bottom of the jacket, just to ensure that when I was working on these they didn't fray. For step 27, there is actually a tutorial that the Friday Pattern Company has done here, but I'm also going to explain it. So if you're still stuck after I've explained it, then you can have a go and look on this link here. But basically what we're doing is hemming all of this area. So I've just opened up the jacket, and what you want to make sure first is see where we've got this longer section here. We're going to be folding this edge up and inwards and ironing that down at 3.5 centimeters. It's all here if you ever get stuck. And then in these sections, we've got this gap here because we stopped sewing, remember? So we're going to be folding this inwards and ironing this up 1.9 centimeters and ironing this up too. So if you get stuck, just follow this guideline, but basically we are just folding up and hemming on either side. Now that that's all ironed, what we're going to be doing is finding the seam which we have ironed towards the lining, which has our knit interfacing on, and we are going to take that, you can hold it like this if you want, and we are going to flip it like this, lay it smoothly out so that it's folded on this seam here. Then what we're going to do is just gently turn the ironing that we've already done outwards and lay it here, and we're going to open all this up, and what we're going to be doing is just doing a stitching line along here. So I'm just going to make sure that's all lined up, and then I'm going to pin it into place so that I can stitch down. Pin this into place and then stitch it down using a 1 centimeter seam allowance. So now what I've done is I've just basically, that's the bit that we've just sewn, and I have just flipped it around again. So now what we're going to be doing is taking this edge of the lining here, which has this folded over edge, and we're going to be pulling it down and matching the edge of it to the tiny little notch that we would have cut in, which is, mine is slightly obscured because of the overlocking, but it is there. We're going to line that up there and match those raw, or in my case overlocked edges, and pin. And then we're just going to pin along to about this point. Not really far, so just pin along there, and then we are just going to be sewing 1 centimeter along till about there, just along. So then what you want to do is actually go to that corner, so put your hand inside the lining and pull the corners out that you've just sewn, and you can see how good the lining has come out. So I'll just show you there. So we can see we've got this lovely clean edge. Well, it will when I've pushed this corner out a bit, but that doesn't matter so much for now. But we do have this tiny little gap here that doesn't look so neat. So what I'm going to do is just take my needle and thread that I used earlier and just go and invisibly, as much as I can invisibly anyway, try and tuck that little edge in there. Now we're going to be continuing that line of stitching that we just put in the entire way round between the two edges. So you want to match the two edges and then sew them along at a 1 centimetre seam allowance. And then, just as we did with the sleeves, we are going to be folding up where we ironed before and just tacking like this so that the hem doesn't go droopy. After that, I cut a little pattern for myself because you need to cut 2 scraps of lining fabric, which are 1 inch wide and 1.5 inches long, to make a sleeve lining tack strip. And because I'm a bit of a perfectionist, I actually drew it out on paper first and then used this to cut out the actual lining pieces. Now I have actually just gone and overlocked around the edges of these 2 little scraps. You don't have to do that, but I just like having the sort of clean edges and just to make sure that they don't fray whilst inside the jacket. And then what we're going to do is find the armpit sort of join to our sleeves. So basically where the side seam of the jacket meets the armpit and the sleeve itself. So on mine, we've got this section here. This is the join. We don't want that one. That's the join between the upper and lower sleeve, but we want the join that is the side seam to the sleeve. So mine's here. And on this side it is here. And what we're going to be doing is taking our little scrap. I'm just going to pin onto the seam allowance, not onto the actual jacket, just onto that seam allowance there, just like that. And then I'm going to do the same on this side. And that's just going to ensure that it doesn't sort of slip down and that the sleeve lining stays within the sleeve. So just going to tack that, and then I'm going to actually just sew it by hand, and I'll do that on either side. Now you can turn the jacket the right way around by using the little slit in the middle back lining that we left open, and then push out any of the corners with some scissors if needs be. Now we need to join our 2 collar seams together. So what I've just done is put a pin in exactly where that center seam is on the collar. And then what we're going to do is, holding the collar, is just take our needle and thread. You can do this by machine as well, and just stitch in the ditch. So this just means that when I'm sewing, I'm lining up this exact seam here with the seam on the other side, looking as I'm going, just to make sure that it is completely even and symmetrical on both sides. So I'm now going to do that. After this, you're basically finished and you can just pin the lining closed. I did this by pinching the fabric so that the 2 raw edges were enclosed, and then I stitched by machine down. Now at this point, this is where we would usually put in the buttonhole and the button itself, and you can top stitch over the top just across the front here and then going around the collar, but I'm not going to do that because I prefer the look of it not stitched along here. And I'm also actually not going to do a buttonhole and a button because I personally know that I won't use that. I won't use the button. So I'm just going to leave it as is, just to give it a very sleek, clean and sort of untouched look at the front. So for now, I'm actually done. I'm just going to give it a quick press, and just to make sure that the collar lays smoothly, I'll be steaming it with my steam iron around a tailor's ham just to make sure that it lies properly. And that is it. We have finally completed this jacket. Now that's actually everything, and thank you so much for watching this sew along. If you did enjoy it and you would like to see some more sew alongs, pattern hauls, anything like that, you can click above next to where it says Minerva to follow any more videos that we put out. And if you do end up making this blazer, I would love to see it. And what you can do is create your free Minerva account. We kind of have a little community of sewists here, and you can upload pictures of your makes, add a little description and tag any of the products that you use, and then I'll be able to see it. Don't forget to leave any comments or questions that you may have below, and until the next time, I'll say bye.